Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by with the Warzone MW3 update on the horizon here with Season 1 on December 6th. Obviously, we're starting to look towards what is going to be the best options in Warzone on day one. We've already gone through and detailed some of the main weapons you want to look out for in terms of the close range meta and the long range meta, but today I wanted to get a bit more specific and focus on the direct attachment categories because obviously we do sort of have this weapon platform system hybrid back for the gunsmith. So to get certain attachments, you might have to use an awkward weapon here or there. You might have some strange unlock criteria. So I wanted to break down some key attachments in all the main categories, optics, muzzles, underbarrels, so on and so forth, that you're probably going to want to have for your day one Warzone experience to have the best setups possible. So as we get into the details, if you enjoy the video, if you find it helpful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, you want to guarantee that every single day you're up to date with all things going on between MW3 and Warzone, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We've got a ton of content coming up here with Season 1, obviously. So when you go into your gunsmith here, obviously it's going to be very similar to the Warzone 2 gunsmith that we had in terms of your attachment categories. There's the basic standard ones on the vast majority of every single gun in the game. Now, specific categories will have some one-off factors here and there. Sometimes a pistol will have a trigger action, or a sniper will have a bolt, or some of the SMGs will have a comb attachment, but those are more weapon specific. I want to focus more on the universal options here between your muzzles, your barrels, your underbarrels, what ammo is going to be good in this game, optics, so on and so forth. So going through these main categories here for muzzles, without a doubt, the suppressor meta is going to be back because it's going to be a classic minimap. So if you shoot an unsuppressed weapon, you are going to show up on the map as a red dot, obviously giving away your position. And that said, some players will be okay with that and they'll want to use something that's not a suppressor and go for various different compensators. And in this game, there are some pretty good choices that are more universal options. For instance, the Stir 45 Sky Fury is going to be a crazy good recoil control compensator that hurts your ADS speed by about 12.5%, but you're getting an 18% increase to horizontal and vertical. So if you're looking for straight up control from a compensator and you're okay with being on the minimap, that is going to be a really good option. One that I've been running a lot as well is the T4L Saber compensator. This is going to give you a 25% increase to horizontal control, but it does hurt your range a little bit. So this is something that, for instance, would be great on a close range based weapon that might have a lot of kick back and forth. That'd be a really good option there. The Cassis Break for mid to long range weapons, also specifically focusing on horizontal recoil, great for weapons that have that type of pattern, and it's a minimal con to your ADS at 6.5% basically. So those are some standout options in my opinion. Of course, some of your basic MW2 ones are going to be good as well. The Castle compensator, the Sack and Tread 40. But like I said, for the most part, the suppressor meta is back. And with this, there are a few options here that are going to be standouts. There's also some you might want to avoid. So right away, something that's really convenient this year is the Shadow Strike suppressor, or the equivalent to this on any given weapon. Some weapons are going to have, suppressors that have different names, but they do the same thing like what we've seen in the past. But the Shadow Strike suppressor here you see has no pros and no cons. The only pro here is that it's undetectable by the radar. So this is a suppressor that does not extend your range, but it doesn't hurt your ADS. It just simply keeps you off the map. So if you're someone who doesn't want to hurt your control or hurt your ADS speed or hurt your range, or whatever the case may be, you can run this and it's just straight up available to keep you off the map. That's a really cool idea. And just a heads up as we go through all the attachment categories here, if you don't have something in specific unlocked, go to the attachment when it's locked and it'll say in the top left under its name, unlocked by leveling, the MTZ to level 4, whatever the case may be. I've got every gun in the game max, so I have all the attachments. And I'd recommend trying to do that, but obviously not everyone will have the time. But you're going to notice that a lot of suppressors in this game actually have some pretty rough cons if they are MW3 based. For instance, the Spitfire is going to be great for better control and range on a mid to long range based weapon, but it's also hurting your ADS speed by 22%, which is pretty significant all things considered. So when you're building out mid to long range guns this year and using these suppressors, you're really going to have to pay attention to how much you're hurting things like your ADS speed or your strafe speed in certain situations. You do have some that are simply meant for velocity. Like for instance, this is something like the Echoless 80 that we've seen in the past, where it's only helping your velocity, but you're getting an 8% increase to control across the board, which might not be super helpful for a long range gun. You don't want to add more recoil to that. Obviously, the Monolithic is back this year and it's only helping control this time around. It's also going to be hurting your ADS speed as well, but that one's less, control added, but also less of a con for your ADS speed. So they've actually gone through and balanced these out extremely well. And there's also ones like, for instance, the silent fire that are going to be hurting your range. So for long range guns, probably not a super viable option if they're killing your range and your ADS speed. Like, this is one you'd probably want to avoid entirely. It's not giving you a ton of control, and it's hurting other attachment categories pretty severely. But basically, it'll be like years past, where if you want the efficiency in the mid to long range, you're gonna have to focus on ones that are going to help with your control and or your range, but have a decently large impact on your ADS speeds and whatnot. And that's something you'll just have to gain back with attachments elsewhere. Now for barrels here, it's a bit more weapon specific. Obviously, some weapons you're gonna want a fast barrel, like some of the close to mid-range SMGs or ARs. If you're building them out to be hybrid like that, you'll want the more aggressive options. For mid to long range though, you're really focusing on those ones that are gonna help out with range and velocity and possibly control as well. So those will be the longer, heavier barrels. Like for instance, on the MCW here, the Crater heavy barrel. Better control, better gun kick, doesn't hurt your range at all, so you're getting more accuracy out of that. Second line Mammoth, better range and velocity across the board. No hits to control, but you can obviously get that out of an underbarrel that we'll cover here in just a second. So this one is not as universal as some of the other attachment categories, but it's also a lot more straightforward in the sense of, if you want a long barrel, you're gonna know what you're getting out of that. Control, range, velocity. If you want a fast barrel, you're gonna get strafe speed, ADS speed, but you're gonna have penalties to your control and to your range. So that one's a bit more weapon specific. Lasers is a pretty obvious one for the most part. Attack stance this year, I don't see being a huge thing unless you're specifically using shotguns. But for the most part, you know, looking at close range options or even some more aggressive mid-range options, the Olay laser or the 7mW laser is going to be the go-to for sure for the faster ADS and the faster sprint to fire. These will pretty much be a mainstay on all my SMGs for the snappier ADS and sprint to fire. That's a huge pro to have there. And then if you want a hybrid rifle that's good for sniper support, sort of running and gunning, this could be a good option as well if you have the attachment available. So this is going to be fantastic. If I go ahead, hide the face cam real quick, you'll notice you're getting a 7.5% increase to your ADS speed, 10% to your sprint to fire. That's clutch for more aggressive weapons. A lot of these lasers really aren't all that useful. If you're going for hip fire, the go-to pretty much is going to be the 1mW laser, in my opinion. It's going to be super accurate from the hip. That said, there is also the Grim line, which gives you some sprint to fire as well, just under the face cam there. About almost a 12% increase to sprint to fire while helping your hip fire too. So 1mW and Grim line for hip fire, Olay or the 7mW for your ADS. Not really much changing there in terms of, you know, the attachments year over year. It was largely the same between MW2 and Warzone 2 as well. Now, optics are a bit more preference based, but there are some that I think are going to sort of be like the most popular ones, I guess you could say. By far, the Slate Reflector, I think, is one of the cleanest dot sights in the game. It's your basic blue dot here. If I go ahead, throw this on, we can jump into the firing range and get a quick look at this. Obviously, very clean, very simple, just your basic blue dot option here. Good for, you know, close to mid-range, but also decent for long range as well if you have a low recoil weapon in play there. Again, if you don't have this unlocked, it'll say above the name in the locked portion, unlocked by leveling X gun to X level. The Slimline Pro, it's just a red dot version of the Slate, basically, so that's not a bad one either. By far, my favorite optic in the game is going to be the MK3 Reflector. I think this is gotten via the MTZ to like level 2 or something. Super straightforward. But this is your basic ELO sight. Again, a phenomenal sight for close to mid-range, but could even work for long range as well if you're deadly accurate. Low recoil options will thrive with this one as well. But then for some more mid to long range, I think by far most players' go-to optic here is going to be the Choreo Eagle Eye 2.5 times. This is extremely similar to like the VOK from MW 2019 and Warzone 1. It's going to be a nice 2.5 times scope, obviously, as the name implies. It's also a really clean reticle. Like, I basically have a T-pose reticle on this right now. So for those mid to long range guns, the weapons that you're going to be using the heavy barrels on, your rifles, your LMGs, so on and so forth, this I think is going to be a mainstay option as well. A 2.5 times optic, not going to be crazy in terms of visual recoil. Very clean scope here. That's going to be a phenomenal choice for a lot of players. Now, other options here are largely going to be, you know, player dependent. For instance, the Schlager 3.4 times that we had from MW2, probably going to be a decent option as well in just terms of familiarity there. VOK 4 times could be decent, but the higher the zoom, keep in mind, the more visual recoil you're going to have. But if you like a certain reticle a ton, if you like a certain optic a ton, Optics are always very much so preference based. There are a few standouts though, as mentioned, that I think a lot of players are going to be running. Now, stocks are going to be very similar to barrels in general. It's going to be weapon specific. Sometimes you're going to have an attachment available on an SMG, and if you throw on a stock, you can get some good strafe speed and some good mobility. Sometimes you might have an option available where you can get some good control out of a stock. Like for instance, this is a crazy one, the Regal Heavy, giving you a ton of recoil control for very minimal cons elsewhere. 3% increase to your ADS speed, 4 to your sprint to fire. So for mid to long range, that's a huge benefit. But like I said, stocks largely weapon specific, not really universal choices there. Rear grips are kind of an awkward middle ground. There are some that are really good on a lot of weapons. There are some that are going to be weapon specific. A lot of them just have different names but do similar things. For instance, the claw here is going to be similar to like the D36 or D37, I think it's called. There's a TL20 that's really good as well. But basically, these ones that hurt your aiming idle sway are going to be some of the more advantageous, especially for mid to long range guns. If you're already getting some idle sway out of a barrel or an underbarrel, for instance, these are going to be great to pair with that because you're getting good recoil control for basically no real con there. On MW3 guns in specific, there's not much idle sway or firing aim stability problems there, so you can use these and get away with some solid pros for very minimal drawbacks there. Other options though, you're gonna have SMGs that use rear grips that are like this, where it helps out with your general mobility or ADS and sprint to fire. Those are usually the go-tos for the close range options. Anything that's directly promoting aiming idle sway or flinch resistance, not gonna be a huge deal. For the most part, those are largely irrelevant because you can get that out of other attachments without the cons that these are going to have associated with them. I guess we can talk about conversion kits a little bit here. These are really going to be dependent on how you want a weapon to fuel. I don't think there's going to be a situation where you always want to run a conversion kit on any given gun unless it's like crazy broken or you only want the gun to feel that way. Like on the Peel Yacht, the base Peel Yacht's a great LMG. You use the conversion kit, it's now a more aggressive AR LMG hybrid, but both have their pros and both have their cons there. But these are going to be really cool to implement into your loadouts and into your playstyle, depending on what they do for any given gun. Like the Renetti, you're probably going to want to run that one a lot because it's basically an SMG pistol hybrid. That'll be a great choice. Some conversion kits are going to hurt more than they help though, so that's a bit more weapon specific yet again. Magazines is going to be a universal one. You're always going to want to go for larger magazines, get that damage per mag up. Obviously with the increased TTK and the increased health within Warzone as well, you're going to want to have more ammo. You don't want to be caught reloading in the middle of a fight, so on SMGs, upgrading to a 45 or a 50 round mag, on rifles upgrading to a 40 or a 50 or a 60 round mag, you're always going to go for the larger magazine choices because the increased health with the armor and everything there, that's sort of a no-brainer. Now, ammo in this game is particularly interesting. For one, we've got a ton of options, but a lot of these are actually going to be very useful within Warzone here. So for instance, weapons that you already have great range and velocity on, but you want some better control, honestly, low grain is going to be decent at that. You really have to focus on how much range and velocity you're getting out of other attachments because that's a pretty significant nerf, but it's certainly a viable option there. On the plus side, high grain or high velocity style rounds here, really not doing a ton to your recoil control, only 5 and 10% there, and in the 10s for vertical, and that's not a huge deal, but you're getting decent velocity and range out of that. So the fact that we're getting the 2-in-1 here instead of high velocity only giving you velocity, added range and velocity is a nice twofer there that I think is going to be pretty useful on some mid to long range builds. Snipers, for instance, could really benefit from this for sure if it's available. Not every gun is going to have every ammo type available here. Some of these are not going to be all that useful though, like the NATO Mono, hurting your control and your range for only a little bit of velocity, not really great there. Frangible could be decent this year. It's got that wounding effect, it delays healing. That can be pretty clutch with the regen already being pretty slow here, so that's a viable option. I think one of the largest standouts is going to be Hollow Point. This to me is one of the most vital attachment upgrades you could have in this game specifically. You'll notice if you look at the advanced stats, it's not doing anything, but we know that this disables sprinting for a short time if you hit legs. And with how much movement there is in this game, if you can disable sprinting, that is a huge advantage for you in a gunfight, and why I think in a lot of situations, if you have a gun that you just have an extra attachment spot for, you don't need to run an optic or you're comfortable with the control and the feel of it, and you can throw on an attachment for ammunition, whether it's an SMG for close range or for a mid to long range rifle, hollow point is seriously advantageous because of that slowdown and the inability to sprint if you get shot in the legs. That basically stops that person from outmaneuvering you in a gunfight. That can be so clutch. So this is a huge standout for me where available. We do have some base high velocity rounds. These do hurt your range though, and I do think high grain in this case would be a little bit more beneficial. While you're getting a little bit more velo out of this, the cons are less severe when you're talking about control on MW3 guns, since a lot of them are so easy to use as is. But yeah, ammo this year is surprisingly important category. Then lastly, for underbarrels, this again is going to be largely weapon specific, but there are some really good choices for underbarrels depending on what you're trying to do. There's a lot of options here like the XRK BW4 hand stop. I'm gonna hide the face cam because we're talking a lot about handling and mobility here. This, for instance, is an underbarrel that's really just hurting your hip fire here, but giving you great mobility benefits. So for SMGs that you're very comfortable with in terms of control, this is a fantastic choice. The DR6 hand stop, again, if you're not hip firing a ton, this gives you almost 8.5% for ADS speed, just over 8% on the sprint to fire, good movement speed and ADS speed. That's clutch for making a weapon that you're already very comfortable with even more aggressive and mobile. So those are great choices for mobility. Things like the Phantom here are going to help out with vertical control and recoil gun kick and mobility at the same time. However, anything that attacks horizontal control and makes it worse, I'm not a huge fan of. Horizontal control, as we've talked about, is so important that anytime I can get that boost there, that's huge. And that's why things like the angled grip are so clutch here. It's hurting your vertical a little bit, which is not a huge deal, but giving you 12% to horizontal, and it's only hurting your vertical in general. This is mainly meant for, stability and whatnot, which isn't always expressed on the advanced stats here, but that's a really good option if you just need to focus on horizontal. There's also good options like the choke, which you guys have already seen me running on a lot of my MW3 setups, barely hurting your vertical, hurting your ADS speed a little bit, but that's not something that's wildly important in mid to long range, giving you great mobility stats and horizontal control. You also have your basic ones from MW2 if you're using semi-auto guns or burst weapons, or you just want less sway in general. Edge 47 is going to be great for that. The Ripper 56 is going to be great for that as well. If you're looking at more hip fire style builds, then you'd be looking at things like the Bruin Sync Shot grip. This is going to hurt your mobility a little bit, but give you a ton of hip fire accuracy. A lot of the underbarrels that are vertical grips are also going to be super clutch for hip fire too. You're getting 20% increases here. The Merc 4 grip is going to be great for that as well. These technically also help out a lot with base recoil control. 9% is pretty decent there. So if you have a weapon with a ton of recoil, you could even get by using these for that as well. But really, underbarrels are going to be largely weapon specific and playstyle specific. Are you looking for better mobility out of it? Are you looking for better horizontal control out of it, better aim sway out of it, better hip fire out of it? Depending on what you need there, look for that. But hopefully this gives you a general rundown of what you want to look for in any given category in terms of things you might want to have unlocked and ready for day one if you already know what kind of play style you're headed into Warzone with. That said, that is going to wrap things up. If you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, drop a like on it. It would be really appreciated as always. And if you're new to the channel, you want to guarantee you're up to date with everything going on in Call of Duty, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.